Good afternoon. I'd like to call the Buildings and Grounds Committee to order. We're running a little bit behind, Mr. Rector, so we'll speed this up. Want to welcome our new Buildings and Ground Committee members, Carlos Brown, who's also our Vice Rector, the new BOV members, Marvin Gilliam, David Webb, and our faculty representative, Michael Kennedy. I personally look forward to working with each of you over the next year. Later in the meeting, we're going to hear a brief overview of our committee's areas of responsibility from Colette, our Senior Vice President for Operations and State Government Relations, and to the new members of the committee. If you want to understand what's going on, don't ask me, ask Colette. We have only a couple of action items on the agenda, which are two naming opportunities for our consideration. These namings are recommendations from the university. Space and faculty namings do not move forward without approval from the B&G committee and then the full Board of Visitors. There's been some discussion about, are we the only source of namings? I'll say to the committee that's going to be my personal charge over the next few months to try to understand how namings come forward. Today's meeting is indeed rare, for we will not be considering any capital project designs. Now, that is typically coming in front of this committee's agenda. I don't know how it happened, Jim, but we don't have any. Given the university's robust capital program and the immense amount of ongoing work that it involves, I imagine that the architect for the university, Alice Raucher, will be presenting a significant number of designs in the upcoming December board meeting. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Colette for our first action item, the Robert Carey, MD, Courtyard naming.
Can you help me out here? The slides. Thank you. This doesn't seem to be working.
The next
So
action item will be a new flipper.
Yeah. I'll just go ahead because this is in your materials, but we have two namings. The first one is an honorific naming of a courtyard in the School of Medicine area. It's framed by three research buildings: the Carter Harrison Research Building, and then medical research buildings 4 and 5. The naming is proposed to honor Bob Carey, a longtime faculty member, 50-year faculty member of the School of Medicine, and its longest serving dean. Dr. Carey is a world-renowned clinical endocrinologist and a leader in cardiovascular endocrinology. He is a prolific scholar and researcher, and the health system would like to honor him in this way by naming the courtyard the Dr. Robert M. Carey, MD Courtyard.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the naming of the Robert M. Carey, MD Courtyard?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Colette?
This second action item is really a renaming of sorts. Those of you who were on the board last year will remember Ramon W. Breeden, who has been a very generous donor to the university, both to the McIntire School of Commerce and to the athletics department. Originally, you approved a name, the Ramon W. Breeden Jr. Commerce Grounds, and he has now come back to us and asked us to truncate that name to simply the Breeden Commerce Grounds. So we are bringing that forward for your recommendation, for your approval.
Thank you, Colette. Do I have a motion to approve the renaming of the Breeden Commerce Grounds?
So moved.
Second? Thank you. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Colette?
Okay. What we'd like to do now is talk a little bit about sustainability at UVA. You have at your places a copy of the annual report from 2023-24. And we have some guests with us this morning. You know, this afternoon, it's not very often that we get to bring students before the Buildings and Grounds Committee, so I'm really excited to have Andrea Trimble, who is our Director of the Office of Sustainability, and she has a couple of students with her who will help in the presentation, but I'll let her introduce them. So Andrea, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you today. Joining me are third-year student London Tuma and fourth-year student Ellie Cowan. UVA sustainability programs have continued to grow in both reputation and scope in alignment with increased student interest over the years. Today, we'll share a few highlights on progress towards meeting our sustainability goals with a focus on the Office for Sustainability student leadership programs. UVA sustainability goals acknowledge the role that higher education institutions have in addressing some of the world's most pressing sustainability challenges. In addition to the important roles of research, teaching, and engagement, universities also have significant environmental footprints if left unmitigated. Our stewardship goals include targets for carbon emissions, nitrogen, water, and waste. As we investigate and implement strategies to meet our goals to be carbon neutral by 2030 and fossil fuel free by 2050, our strategy is to first focus on energy efficiency and reducing consumption. This also reduces operational and overall life cycle costs. We are focused on energy efficiency in buildings, reducing emissions in our energy supply, and reducing emissions in our fleet, vehicles, and other operations. Even accounting for increased emissions from growth, we have reduced carbon emissions by over 44% since our baseline year of 2010. Last year, we surpassed our 10-year goal of reducing energy use per square foot over 550 buildings by at least 20%. We achieved 27%, which was a commitment made via the Department of Energy. We've also been expanding our internal building energy efficiency program, especially in regard to high-intensity use spaces such as laboratories and healthcare. Over the past 3 years, across the 75 buildings that our internal building energy efficiency program has worked on since the program's inception, we have avoided over $14 million in energy costs. In 1 year alone, our Sustainable Labs programs reduced energy use by 22%, resulting in nearly $1 million in energy savings, for a total of $2.3 million in utility savings since 2021. For capital projects, we also include targets for energy use reductions. For example, Shannon Library is projected to reduce its energy cost by half compared to the pre-renovation, from $800,000 per year to $400,000 per year annually. I'll now turn it over to London Tuma and Ellie Cowan.
Thank you. UVA's Office for Sustainability offers 4 student sustainability leadership programs led by Sustainability Manager Leela Gardner and Sustainability Advocates, Zero Waste Ambassadors, Eco-Leaders, and a Student Employee Program, which gives students hands-on experience to become sustainability leaders on grounds and beyond. These year-long programs involve project-based work on topics such as waste reduction, energy conservation, and community engagement, helping students build skills and experiences that enrich their time as a student and support their careers in sustainability. The Sustainability Advocates Program is an entry point for students to learn about sustainability at UVA and beyond. This 35-student cohort works closely with the Office for Sustainability staff to learn the fundamentals of sustainability and then apply this knowledge by implementing their own outreach campaigns. The Zero Waste Ambassadors Program empowers student leaders to actively contribute to UVA's ambitious waste reduction goals. Zero Waste Ambassadors help expand and implement composting initiatives around grounds. The Eco Leaders Program, in partnership with Housing and Residence Life, focuses on fostering sustainability in residence halls. By organizing sustainability-focused events and supporting initiatives like the Dorm Energy Race, Eco Leaders collaborate with dorm leadership and the broader community to prioritize energy conservation, water conservation, waste reduction, and more. The Office for Sustainability also employs approximately 20 students per year who work 10 to 20 hours per week across 6 teams, building skills to collaborate to develop and implement projects across grounds. Ellie and I are both student employees in the Office for Sustainability. As a student employee, I have received invaluable support and connections from the Office for Sustainability, enabling me to actively pursue solutions to sustainability challenges on grounds. This hands-on project leadership experience has honed my skills in stakeholder engagement, problem solving, and iterative project improvement, all of which will empower me to drive meaningful and lasting sustainable change in my future endeavors beyond UVA. Last year, OFS student employees organized 10 football and basketball green games, recruiting over 133 volunteers to help divert over 34 tons of waste during all home football games at Scott Stadium and during select home basketball games at John Paul Jones Arena. Additionally, last year, 22 zero waste ambassadors helped divert 9.5 tons from elsewhere on grounds, over 20,000 pounds of material from landfills. A Green Athletics student employee team is dedicated to fostering sustainable practices within the UVA athletic community. Their efforts bridge sports and environmentalism through engagement, education, and service. For example, they collaborated with interested students to support Aces for Earth, a tennis ball recycling initiative saving over 2,100 tennis balls from landfills. Move in and move out are also important opportunities for waste reduction. Students help the Office for Sustainability with cardboard and other recycling during move-in. During move-out, the Who's Reuse helps divert gently used items from landfills and instead donates to Goodwill and the UVA Community Food Pantry. Last year, the donation drive stationed 24 dorm collection points, 19 outdoor collection bins, and 7 food donation bins. These diverted over 9,000 pounds of home goods and furniture and over 1,000 pounds of non-perishable food. I'll now turn it over to Ellie Cowan.
Thank you, London. The Office for Sustainability's Student Service Learning Team organizes volunteer and educational events for UVA students to engage with sustainability initiatives on and around grounds. This year, we hosted over 9 corner cleanup events, recruiting over 220 volunteers and collecting over 82 bags of waste. OFS student employees organized over 50 UVA student garden workdays at the corner of Alderman and McCormick roads and supported the installation of a new shed. Additionally, student employees organized volunteering opportunities for the sustainability advocates and accumulated over 250 hours of sustainability-focused volunteer service. The Equity and Environment team aims to support student interest in environmental justice and ensure inclusive operations in UVA in Charlottesville. This year, we organized over 5 Thankful Thoughts programs where we wrote and sent over 85 letters of appreciation to 19 different local organizations. The student outreach team's primary focus is to work with the sustainability advocates to develop meaningful projects on grounds. This year, we hosted weekly meetings for 35 sustainability advocates who implemented projects centered around food accessibility, green spaces, clean energy, water conservation, and more. The Green Living student team focuses on advancing sustainability actions in residence halls, including hosting indoor programs for RAs and leading the Eco Leaders program. This year, we facilitated 32 engagement programs, most of which were hosted in dorm spaces, with over 600 student attendees. The Green Living team also led a group of 13 Eco Leaders, facilitating conversations on sustainability. Students also helped the Office for Sustainability organize the annual Eco Fair, which drew 26 organizations and over 300 attendees to the Peabody Lawn on Earth Day. On a personal note, the Office for Sustainability has supplied me with invaluable experience, including managing volunteer events, recruiting passionate students, and teaching important lifelong sustainability habits. As a 4th year and young aspiring professional looking to work in the environmental field, I'm confident that I will carry what I have learned at the office in my future career. That concludes our presentation. Thank you so much for your time.
We have any questions?
I'd like to ask what was in those 82 bags from the corner, but I don't really want to do that.
Don't know if you want the answer to that one.
Gus Burgers. Okay, so Steve opened the door. I'm really curious about the 1,000 pounds of non-perishable food. Did that come out of dorm rooms and apartments? And can you give some examples of the kind of food that was collected?
Yeah, absolutely.
Some on the table.
Come back to take my seat at the table. Non-perishable foods could be things like a lot of dorm students have like crackers or like various snacks that they've acquired, or I mean, I would say apartments more so are going to be the things donating like beans or things that you would use to cook, not in the dorms themselves. Depends, I guess, with the new dorms like Gaston and all of that.
Yeah.
If they have kitchens, then like that would be something that we'll probably see an influx more so from that end in kitchen supplies. But yeah, those are the non-perishable foods that we're typically
A lot of
collecting.
food.
It's a, yeah, significant. I mean, 1,000 pounds feeds a lot of people.
Well, you know how when you move out of your house, the last thing you remember to do is to clean out the refrigerator? Yeah. And you're tired and exhausted, so you end up just throwing away all this perfectly good stuff. In my mind's eye, I picture that's what you're talking about when kids
Exactly.
move out at the end of the year, but maybe that's not right.
Like, exactly, it's a convenience thing for them. Like, they just want to get rid of it. They don't want to bring it back home. And so if we make it easy for them to just like drop it off as if they would drop it off at the trash, then we can take that burden off and save it all from going to the landfill.
Well done.
Thank you very much.
Right. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Well, thank you, not only for what your time and your energy, but your enthusiasm over time turns into progress. And for those of us in our age group, I like to see the enthusiasm. That's great work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Jim, let me say, having cleaned out my granddaughter's apartment last year from the 4th floor with no elevators, there was a lot of trash. All right, next is a report from Colette. She'll provide an overview of the committee's areas of responsibility and an update on the university's initiative to develop more student housing. Colette?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that when you're a new board member, you get like bombarded with a lot of information and possibly too much to even take in. So I thought I'd just spend a few minutes, this would maybe also be a good reminder for our current members of the charge for the Buildings and Grounds Committee and what you could expect to see coming before you over the next year, over the course of this year's meetings. The board manual outlines that the B&G Committee is responsible for all matters relating to land use and physical plan. And in Charlottesville, that actually means it's over 19 million square feet in 570 buildings and about 1,200 contiguous acres to central grounds. You'll be considering a number of things that we will bring to you for discussion and for approval. New capital projects are probably the lion's share of what makes up our agenda, which would include site and design guidelines for new buildings. Namings, as we did earlier in the agenda, is part of the actions we might bring to you. If we ever should decide to demolish a building, which is very rare, that would also require your approval. And major land use plannings and, of course, sustainability issues as well, as you heard. There are kind of four major buckets, so to speak, of work the Buildings and Grounds Committee does. I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically about the capital plan, but you just heard about sustainability. The university is fortunate to have our own university building official, which is a result of the Restructuring Act and Management Agreement, which were approved in 2005 and 2006. What this does is it gives us authority locally to approve all of our capital projects from the very start to the very end, the certificate of occupancy. So Ben Hayes, who is here, Ben, where are you? Mm-hmm. Ben is our university building official. He has a small team of professionals who review all of the outside architects who design buildings for us. He reviews all of their drawings to ensure that they comply with the statewide building code. And believe me, it saves a ton of time for us in capital projects. Because if you don't have a university building official, then you have to go to Richmond. The central department in Richmond has to review those things for you, and many institutions have to do that. The second, whoops. Let me go back. The other bucket is historic preservation, which, as you all know, as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, our historic buildings are quite near and dear to us. And we have a team both in Alice's office, in the architect's office, as well as in facilities management, who work very closely to preserve and maintain our historic buildings. And in fact, in your written materials at this meeting, you have a report from that team of the work they have done over the last year. So a little bit about the capital program. You approve the major capital program every year in June. For us, a capital project is a major renovation or new construction costing $5 million or more. And the process, in fact, we're about to kick off the process next week. It takes a number of months, so it's from September through June to get it to you for approval. But you'll see it in the interim, you'll see it in your first spring meeting. And there is also you've delegated to the chair of the Buildings and Grounds Committee and to JJ as the COO, approval for minor capital projects, which range from $3 to $5 million and always being paid for with cash. So that's just takes something off your plate. This is just a kind of a flow chart of the process. I think what's key is that it starts at the school and unit level, and then comes up through the executive leadership, ultimately to you. But I want to focus a little bit for your purposes on what the Buildings and Grounds Committee will be asked to act upon. First of all, it's the approval of the plan. So putting a project on the capital plan is part of, that would come to you, and it would also go to the full board. And then as a committee, you would act on concept site and design guidelines, which Alice would come before you and present, and then as well as the design for the building. We bring it to you twice, once for you to review, and we take all the feedback that you have about that. And we all know how much people love to be architects. And then we'll come back and ask for approval at a subsequent meeting. So Alice is here. You've met, I think most people know Alice. Alice Rauscher, our architect for the university. Any questions about that before I move on? Okay. The next, no, wait. That's not right. Where's the, oh, there we go. I wanted to give you just a brief update on our student housing process. You know that the 2030 strategic plan includes as a goal to be able to house all of our second-year students, in addition to our first years, in on-grounds housing. And we have about 6,800 beds on grounds, but in order to house both first and second year students, plus retain accommodations for third and fourth years who want to live on grounds, we need to build probably between 2,000 and 2,400 new beds. And so we've embarked on a different kind of process for us. It's a P3, a public-private partnership. We've done an RFQ, we've done an RFP, we've had interviews with a number of different teams, and this is a case where the developer comes with an architect, with a contractor, and with all of their sub-consultants as a package, rather than us hiring an architect separately and then hiring a contractor. And so we are in the very, very final stages of that procurement process. We'll be interviewing the final two firms and then making a recommendation first to executive leadership and then bringing that forward to the board for a selection. But we're pretty excited about the prospect. This is just a different way of procuring capital construction from what we usually do, and we usually, build it ourselves. So we're anxious to see that play out. Any questions about that?
Hey, Colette, what is the universe of properties that you're looking at for student housing?
Oh, well, we looked at a number of different sites around grounds, but we have two that we're focused on right now. One is, if you know where the Afghan Kebab restaurant is on Emmett Street across from JPJ. So we own all that property. The foundation owns it, actually, some of it. So that would be one site. Probably could take the largest development there, 1,200 some beds perhaps.
You on the property where the old hotel was too?
Where the which?
The old hotel?
No.
You didn't get that?
No,
You on the
we
ground under the Afghan
Yeah, we do,
kebab?
no, we do not own where the hotel was.
Okay.
And then the second site is on the Ivy Corridor, actually at the western end of the Ivy Corridor, which would be kind of cool because student housing would actually finish out that western edge and run along the railroad tracks, as well as likely some kind of building.
That's where the 7-Eleven was?
No, further west.
Further up.
Yeah, so Karsh, where you can see the pad site for Karsh, then it would be further west from that. And against the rail, probably, slightly, a number of stories against the railroad tracks, and then stepping down toward Ivy Road.
Is that across the street from the softball field?
No, it's the corner of Copley, of Alderman and, Copley and Ivy Road. There's a St. Mark's Lutheran Church is on the opposite corner,
Near Foods of All Nations.
near Foods of All Nations, right?
Colette,
A point of reference on the 2030 plan, is the intent that the second-year dorms would be mandatory or optional?
Mandatory.
Mandatory.
Colette, if we're partnering with a private enterprise, how do we control what the cost will be? Because obviously, they're a private enterprise, they want to maximize profit, we want to protect our students. How's that relationship work?
Well, I think first it's from what we set out in the RFP in terms of the assumptions that they were supposed to make in what they design and what they bring forward. And we tried to control the rate structure, the future rate structure for housing, because we want to keep it affordable for our students. And we will work in partnership with them. They don't just go off and build whatever they feel like building. So they've already presented some kind of model designs, and we will work in partnership with them.
So I'm talking 5-6 years down the road, what control do we have over the cost of housing for our students versus their,
Because we're gonna run the housing.
It's not an ownership. They don't get ownership.
They don't get ownership.
They're a fee
No,
developer.
sorry.
okay.
They're just a fee developer, right?
Okay,
Yep,
thank
yep,
you.
Yep. Yes.
Both of those places are pretty far from grounds. Will there be new parking for students with that? And then how are these people gonna get from there to here for classes and such? Because it's not close as far as
Well,
places
it's
that
right
are.
next to Lambeth. The Emmett Street is right next to Lambeth, which is upper class housing. And there's, the Goodwin Bridge, which goes up to Rugby right there. And then Ivy Corridor is, they will walk to class.
There's a bus service.
There's bus service,
Scooters.
yes.
It'll be scooters.
Data science majors, they're good.
Whoops.
Don, you want to talk about
Anything else?
how you're going to build them?
All right, well. Don Sundgren, who's our Associate Vice President and Chief Facilities Officer, is here. This topic kind of came up at the June meeting around how we procure capital construction, particularly when we use CM at risk. And also, and that brings into play a new state law that just went into effect in July. So Don's gonna talk about that.
Right, the new law that went into effect in July will likely bring this committee into the process of doing a contractor selection, contractor procurement at some point in time. for potentially a couple different reasons. That's why I wanted to, we'll talk through that now. But first, thought we'd just give some background on the construction procurement methods. There are 3 methods that are recognized by the state: design, bid, build, design, build, and construction manager at risk. First of all, design, bid, build. These are typically for projects that aren't real complex and of a manageable size. In this case, we would hire an architect, a design professional, design the project in total, and then go out, advertise publicly for bids. And the low responsive bidder gets the project. And responsive is important. And responsive, in this case, has nothing to do with the firm's capacity or capability of doing the project, only their financial wherewithal to support the project, primarily through bonding and insurance. Other than that, low price wins, period. So there's risk associated with design, bid, build, and it's got to be set up in the right way. We use it, but we use it mostly for that third line down, third bullet down there, for our pre-qualified on-demand contractors. So what that means is we've got the ability to create sets of on-demand contractors. We've got them for general construction, mechanical, electrical, site work, roofing, and so forth. And for projects under $10 million, we can go to that set of contractors around a 5-year term, that set of contractors, and get a fixed bid for the project and award to them. The difference between that and the standard design bid build is these are pre-qualified through a competitive basis, through a competitive process.
Just a question there.
Right.
Although the bidders, the builders are pre-qualified, is there still a competitive process amongst bidders that are pre-qualified, or is it?
So there's a process in which we go with a technical evaluation as well as have them actually provide a quotation for a specific project, and we select 5 firms based on that competitive negotiation, and those 5 work on a 5-year term that's renewable.
But the individual projects are not bid.
Pardon me?
The individual projects in that context are not bid amongst those.
That's correct.
Okay, so
Yeah,
they're pre-qualified, but they're not, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're pre-qualifying them to be allowed to submit fixed prices on projects along the way. And again, these are under $10 million. That was $5 million, we raised it to $10 million. Design build, this is we go out with an intent of what we want for a project, and then we compete for a design build contractor. The contractor brings the designer with them. And we use this on parking garages, simple projects. We've also used it a number of times for residence halls, also relatively simple projects. 2-step process, and we did this on the Fontaine garage, and we're doing it right now in the North Grounds garage. And the last one is the construction manager at risk. Typically used for the larger projects that are more complex, where it's felt there's a benefit to having a contractor engaged through the design process to assist with constructability, scheduling, estimating, phasing of a project, and so forth. We have to bring, by statute, we have to bring the CM on board prior to schematic design for this. Looking back over 6 years, this is how our projects spread out. Design, bid, build, 123 of them, contract value of 141 million, or something just over $1 million per project. Design, build, 3 projects, 105 million. CM at risk, the larger ones, 37 projects, $1.5 million. And that's $1.5 billion, excuse me, decimal points. $1.5 billion, and that's about 40 million a project, something like that. Okay, so that's what our recent history has been.
Oops.
Wow.
Press the white button, the white big one.
I'm doing pretty good so far.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's the last one. That's your last one.
No.
No?
Okay, so there were, I'll verbalize it.
Speak to it.
There were a couple other slides. One of them shows the difference in schedule between design, bid, build, and CM at risk. With CM at risk, we are able to go forward in construction prior to the completion of design. the example that we had on the slide was a recently completed football operations center. It was completed in June of 2024. If we had done that design, bid, build, the completion would be more like May, June of 2025, about a year later. Reason for the difference is we were able to overlap by 9 months the beginning of construction with the completion of design. Essentially cut 9 months out of the schedule. And the couple of domino effects there, if we had gone with design, bid, build, we would not be complete with football until this next spring. That would have delayed Olympic sports by about a year and would have delayed the removal of the training grounds by about a year. A pretty significant impact all the way down the line. So that's the area that we are most likely to come to the board with for project approvals, is when there's a schedule desire, a schedule advantage. The state does not recognize schedule improvement as a criterion for going with CM at risk, but that's the one that we use most frequently. In the past 5 or 6 years, we have asked for 4 different alternate procurements from the state. One of them was softball, Palmer Field. That was for schedule. Football Operations Center, Olympic sports, also for schedule. The other one was for physics, which was a multi-phased project in an operating facility. And we thought it was important to have a CM on board to help work through the phasing and the design of the phasing. The state didn't agree. So prior to July 1st, we were able to go ahead, because of the autonomy Colette was talking about, we were able to go ahead, and even if the Department of General Services didn't agree, we could move forward with the procurement that we selected. Some of that autonomy got pulled back. So as of July 1st, now if the Department of General Services doesn't agree with us, we have to bring it to this committee for approval of the procurement method. And again, that will likely be around schedule aspirations. And so that's what the difference, simple, but we're gonna try to time that where it doesn't have an impact on the schedule for the project about when we bring it to this board for consideration. If the board approves it, we move forward. If the board doesn't approve it, we go back to design, bid, build on the elongated schedule. That's it.
This one,
Questions?
what risk was the state trying to mitigate against by passing that law? What were they concerned about?
So, so my view, I think it's correct, is there are small, of course it's correct. There are the small to medium-sized contractors who feel they cannot win contracts at higher ed unless it's on a firm bid basis, design, bid, build, that they can't win it on at CM at risk that has a lot of technical evaluation involved. We don't agree with that, and we've got a really, really good record of awarding CM at risk projects to smaller contractors. All they need to be successful at CM at risk is estimators, superintendents, project managers, and they all have it. It's a matter of attitude more than it is other kind of capability. But there's a fairly effective lobbying effort in that regard that comes up with proposed legislation every year. And there's kind of like, it's just kind of tries to keep eroding autonomy of some of the schools, ours, for example, and they got this past year.
Don, a related question. You've explained this to me before, but I still don't quite understand it. And maybe the answer is in politics and not logic. But I would think that you would want to hire a construction manager after you've done the design, and then you go out and you get competitive bids. So the person who's going to be doing, the firm that's going to be doing the construction bids on the actual project. Once you bring someone in, you've already selected them. Like, they don't have a lot of incentives, it seems to me, to cut their own costs. You've already picked them. That's part one. Part two, remind me again, who is at risk? What does the at risk piece mean?
So that's analogous to guaranteed maximum price. There's no guarantee in that price, and at risk is a bit of a misnomer. Let me answer the first question first, if I could, President Ryan. First of all, we bring a construction manager, engage a construction manager at schematic design, which is dictated by the state. We have to do it then. And we do that on the basis of a technical evaluation and also an evaluation of their fixed price for their construction manager, CM services. That includes their people, their bonding, their insurance, and all that. That, depending on the size and type of the project, is anywhere from 7 to 10% of the overall construction cost of a project. That's all they have is that piece, and that's fixed. Their profit, everything is fixed.
It's a fixed percentage.
No, it's a fixed number. It's a fixed number. I said the number varies between 7 and 10% of the project,
see.
but it's a fixed dollar value. Then, as we progress through design and we go to market on completed design, that is all competed. So over 90% of the project cost is competed. And the reason that we're able to, I should mention, the reason we're able to move forward with the projects like Seam at Risk with a schedule advantage is Colette talked about Ben's involvement before. The building official's office here can issue sequential building permits to allow us to start early, site work, foundation work, structural steel, et cetera, to enable us to get an early start on the job instead of waiting and issuing an umbrella building permit at the end of design. So that's a big advantage there. But did that answer the question?
And the
Okay.
at risk?
Pardon?
The at-risk part.
Oh, the at-risk, yeah. So there is not an at-risk. That's a common phrase. It's been used forever. I've been on panels before where I challenged the language, saying, "Tell me where the risk is in an at-risk." The only risk there is they've got their fixed price for CM services, and they've got a budget that we try to achieve. The risk could be reputational, and the risk could be with their fixed price for CM services. That's not huge. It's not the same as a risk of fixed price for the entire project. It doesn't have that level of risk, correct? But again, the reason to do that is the value add of having an experienced contractor on board during design to assist with the design phase. And sometimes it's not just the size of the project. I mentioned before residence halls. Residence halls are basically simple projects. They just, everything just kind of stacks up. So doing a seam at risk for a residence hall, except in some cases, does not really make a lot of good sense. It's a better buy to do it on a bid basis, typically. Just like we mentioned the parking garage and different projects like that.
So in the private sector, you have subcontractors, you have a general contractor, and then you either have a CM, which is the same as a developer, or you have a developer.
Yeah.
So CM in this sense, I think you really mean the general contractor.
It is a general contractor. That's quite right. It's a general contractor. However, they're restricted in the amount of work they can self-perform, restricted to 10% of the contract value that they can self-perform. Yeah.
But aren't they at risk for the cost going over? If their sub blows out and goes bankrupt, they're still responsible to maintain the same cost?
Yes, so they are responsible. Their risk comes into the subcontract administration and management, yes. So an electrical subcontractor bids something for $5 million for the job. If that goes over the $5 million at no fault of the university, then it's up to that electrical subcontractor and up to the construction manager. It's not on the university.
Right.
They're at risk for that 90% of the costs.
That's right, that's what I'm saying. So
That's correct.
there's substantial cost overrun risk, I think, to the GC.
That's correct, yeah. Within the subcontractor trade.
When things were going up 30%, when lumber was going up 30, 40, 50%, yeah, people got in a lot of trouble who had contracts because they had to honor, and they just refused to. So then you get into what kind of bond do you have and all that.
Yeah, there's another model we don't use that does it a little bit differently from that, which really takes the risk away from the contractor. But the way we do it, it winds up with a fixed price at the end of the day to try to let as much risk as possible reside with the contractor. Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Colette, any follow-up?
Nope, not on that topic.
All right. Well, thank you both. Now we'll hear from Tim Rose, CEO of, the UVA Foundation. At the B&G committee this past June, many board members had questions about the North Fork Research Park. Now, it's owned and managed by the foundation. So, Tim, thank you for being with us. He's going to provide some background on Research Park and an overview of the services that you provide us. Tim, thank you.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that very much. thank you, and thank you, Ms. Sheehy, and nudge me if I go too long here, but we take our work very seriously in shepherding the assets that you have entrusted to us to manage on your behalf, and I'm excited to tell you a little bit about what we do. Back in the late 70s, early 80s, and this is to lay the groundwork for how we became an entity and how we got into the research parks. Back in the 70s and early 80s, UVA ran out of land on which to develop, on which to expand, to provide its research and educational programs. And it was also looking for a way to improve relationships with the city and the county. This is a picture of West Main Street, at the end of West Main Street, closer to the health system. So President Herford invited the Urban Land Institute, which is the preeminent real estate association in the country. Some of you may be members of ULI. They were invited to grounds, and they worked with the university to create a report on how UVA could do the following things. Number one, find a mechanism for providing space for UVA's future needs. Number two, be proactive in facilitating relationships between the private sector and the university, particularly as it related to connecting research and employment to the university. And then three, create an agreement with the city and county whereby we would voluntarily pay real estate taxes. Hence the creation of what is now called the UVA Foundation. Originally it was called the UVA Real Estate Foundation. We expanded to provide some additional services for UVA and changed the name early on, but in 1986 we were created. And we are doing those things. The reason we're so successful is the motto we have right here, which is we only have one customer. It's the people in this room. We serve the University of Virginia. And to ensure that we are in lockstep with what you want, out of our 20-member board, we have 7 people who have an affiliation with our organizations. This is one of the best things that the people who created the foundation did. And that was a part of ULI's recommendation. So while you don't control our foundation, you have a seat at the table. The chairman, Danny Abramson, who does a fantastic job, is actually appointed as our chair by Rector Hardy. The rector always appoints our chair. Mr. Blue, Mr. Now sit on our board as chairs of the Buildings and Grounds and the Finance Committee. And by the way, Mr. Hardy and Mr. Payne used to sit on our board when they were involved with the B&G committee as well. And then, of course, Mark Llewellyn, President Ryan, and Vice President McMahon are also on our board. I work very closely with our Chief Operating Officer, J.J. Davis, and also with Alice Raucher and Don and Colette in pretty much everything we do that relates to real estate. I want to talk about one of the main things we do. I'll get to the research park here quickly. We have acquired, at your request, over time, probably 10 different, we call them districts? Precincts? Districts. This is one example which will explain exactly what we do. This is Brandon Avenue. Over a period of 13 years, we acquired 18 different properties. And if you look at that picture, the orange is all land owned by UVA. The foundation doesn't own anything anymore, but those are all UVA in the orange. The properties that are outlined in white are properties that we acquired at your request. I think the original property, Mr. Now, was to help facilitate the creation of the Arts and Sciences Project, which has your name on it. And then, as you know, the Student Health Center, the Bond House, the other residential college is down there now. So again, we've done that on about 10 different projects. While it's only 7 acres, it's really important to the university. And I don't have time to go into the others, but you probably know most of them. I do want to mention a couple other major programs. This is a view of Morven, which most likely many of you have been to, we do manage UVA's real estate gift program. We've received about 90 real estate gifts over the years, this being our largest. This one was 7,400 acres. We sold approximately half of it to create an endowment to pay for the maintenance of the property that we still hold. We hold about 3,000 acres, and President Ryan's request that Provost Bauckham pursue a sustainability lab, we're in the process of assisting you with that. Here are some pictures of some of the facilities that are out there. So in addition to owning the land, we have a staff of about 10 people out there that take care of the grounds and the buildings. We also are involved in hospitality. We are the owner and operator of the Boar's Head Resort, and we are partnering with you all in the development of the Virginia Guest House. UVA is building it, and once it's completed about a year from now, we will operate it through a third-party operator. Lastly, before the research park, Mark Llewellyn and his team have been really wonderful to work with in creating facilities for UVA's athletic programs. We have at the resort, we have 6 NCAA teams that are out there pretty much every day, world-class facilities. It's really been exciting to work with them. And just a plug for the golf team, I believe the golf team won the tournament at Inverness this past weekend. The men's beating 3 of the top 5 teams in the country. The women's team just won a tournament in Japan. I think that was 2 weeks ago. I can tell you before the squash, the tennis, and the golf facilities were created, those were not the kind of results that UVA was getting. So it's been really exciting to work with. So let's go to North Fork. North Fork is what we call a UVA Discovery Park. It is out adjacent to the Charlottesville-Albemarle Airport. And I think this might be what brought up my being here. Mr. Ellis has a company that is located out there that's called Data Shapes. And it is the poster child for what we're trying to do. It's an artificial intelligence company that has an affiliation with departments at the university. And we are trying to, again, marry up faculty, students with the private sector. Research, employment, trailing spouses employment is really important. Getting students out there in internships. So again, some history. In the late 70s, early 80s, also, there was something called the Continuous Electronic Beam Accelerator Facility, known as CBAF. CBAF told the university, we want to be in Charlottesville. We're coming there. We're going to bring hundreds of scientists and affiliate with your academic programs. There was no land that was ready, no land that was permitted. And so CBAF, which is now called Jefferson Labs, moved to Newport News. They have 750 employees, $200 million annual budget. Would have been fantastic for this university. So the people that sat in this room said, we're not going to let that happen again. We're going to provide space for them. And I think the Manning Institute is an example of this. The Fontaine Research Park was the first park we developed for you. And we have land, and now you have the Biotechnology Institute there. So it's been a lot of excitement and fun to work on these projects. So we purchased this land. It's north of town. This is a little hard to see, but that blue space is the 562 acres that is the North Fork Research Park. It's adjacent to the airport, which is shown in the gray to the left. Charlottesville's down below. And we have the development capacity approved by the county to put a total of 3.7 million square feet in there. So that's about 6 times what is currently in the Fontaine Research Park. We currently have about 1 Fontaine Research Park out there. So there's a lot of room for growth. And we recently got the property rezoned to allow for up to 1,400 residential units that can be added there as well. The goal is to make this a 24/7 work-play environment. And we hope that housing will help stimulate and help attract companies like Data Shapes and some of the others that we have out there. This is an example of what the park might look like in the future. The line horizontal at the bottom is 29 going north. We have about 10 buildings out there, probably 1,500 employees in over 30 different companies, and it's very active right now. This is a mixture of our tenants. You can see here that about a third of them are under the category of federal contractors. They work with the National Ground Intelligence Center. They work with the Defense Intelligence Agency, 2 federal units that are across the street. And these contractors hire faculty, hire students, and it's not just in business and engineering. We've had the drama department out there. We've had the English department out there. There are all sorts of the School of Education's been out there. It's been really exciting. One thing that's happened here, similar to Fontaine, that we didn't expect is 44% of our tenants are directly related to UVA. So we have been an expansion space for the university when it needs space. Here are the logos of some of the companies that are out there. So the last slide is just to say this site number 8 is in partnership with Governor Youngkin and his team. We were the recipient of a grant that we competed for to get us what's called a ready site, to provide a site so that when a company calls on this community and says we'd like a place to go, that we're ready to go. So this is another exciting thing that's happening out there. And I will check my time and see if I did it under 10 minutes and take any questions you might have. Yes, sir.
On that site 8, excuse me, you have all water, sewer, is that a ready-to-go site?
The water and sewer is not there. The water and sewer is on the main artery there.
So it's got to be run in.
We'll need to get it there, yes.
Yep. Any other questions? Thank you, Tim. Thanks for the work you do. Colette?
Okay, I know I'm over time, but I had some really cool pictures of 2 big projects that we just finished last month. The physics building, this was a majority state-funded project. We did it in phases. It was occupied while we did the renovation. But this is so most of what happened is inside the building, but this is a particular exterior view where you see on the left where those brick arches are, they are now windows because we now have classrooms behind there. But here's a lab, old and new. This is one of the flat floor active learning classrooms. There are now 3 classrooms in the building. On the left is what that auditorium behind those brick walls used to look like, and on the right is the new setup. Open spaces. This is probably the most transformational. This is the 4th floor attic. And on the left, it just was storage, basically, unoccupiable storage. And on the right is what we have converted with the skylight and offices and collaboration spaces on both sides of the corridor, which is pretty cool. Then the other one is Gaston and Ramazani houses, our newest residence halls, 2 buildings on Brandon Avenue. There are actually all second-year students in those buildings. This is a view of a typical apartment. It's 8 students to an apartment with 2 kitchens and a common living area.
Are there singles or doubles?
Single bedrooms,
2 kitchens?
because there's 8 students, yeah.
2 kitchens?
These are just lounge spaces, lots of light, lots of bright colors. There's some exterior terrace spaces. This is another lounge on the right. Then this, in Gaston House, there is a food court, which is kind of a new kind of concept for us. There's a Denny's Den, which is kind of a diner style
eatery. There's a place called The Launch, which has rotating cuisine. There's a bodega, which sells sandwiches, a bakery and coffee shop. And then this on the right is our very first 24/7 Amazon walkout store, which I'm sure you've seen them in airports. But you put your credit card you read the credit card, you walk in, you take anything off the shelves that you want, and when you walk out, it charges your credit card. And in students' cases, you can use Grubhub too, or your Flex Dollars. But it's pretty cool. It has 93 cameras in it, and it's been very, very popular, particularly late at night when the students are studying and whatnot. So we're excited about all the concepts. Amanda and Bert got to have lunch there yesterday with us. Still probably have a few bugs to work out in terms of the serving speed, but we'll get there, and the students seem to be enjoying it.
Very nice facility.
I was very impressed, especially with the technology. I had to go back. I went in the Amazon store to buy a pack of gum because I needed to see how it worked. But I would have been in trouble as a student because it's not real money.
Yeah. That's right. You're right.
I'm hoping my kids don't discover it.
Warned us we were too old.
And that's all we've got.
Thank you. Is there any other business before the committee?
Not from my end.
Being none, we're out of here.
Thank you. Thank you for the time.
There's your meeting, sir.
Gotta hit the gavel, my friend, John.
We are,
John, you gotta gavel it, man.
we are
I
about.
do?